Welcome to MCN. I'm Alastair Fagan, and this is the all-new Honda CB1000F. Now, it's based on the Hornet, very much so. Most of the bike is Hornet, apart from the tank and the aesthetics and seat and styling, essentially. Most of the base is the same as the Hornet, which has been massively popular for Honda. But what do we need from a modern retro bike? We need modern retro looks. Tick, big tick. I think this looks incredible in these Freddie Spencer heritage colours. Now, we're here just outside Rome. We're going to spend the day riding it to find out a few things. One, is it as good as Kawasaki's Z900 RS? And two, why is it more expensive than the Hornet?
Apart from the subframe, which is beefed up to cope with luggage and pillions, the chassis is identical to the Hornet. Even the geometry is the same. But the big changes to the CB1000F are in the engine. Honda engineers have shifted all the power to the bottom end and mid-range via inlet and exhaust tweaks, and clever cam timing and valve timing developments. It makes a few horsepower less than the Hornet and weighs a few kilos more, partly down to the F wearing the 6-axis IMU pinched from the CB1000 GT. Arguably a bit overkill for a bike like this. So, a Hornet-based bruiser dressed in Freddie Spencer heritage attire with a detuned engine costing £10,599. You know exactly what you're getting, right? Wrong.
Well, the first thing we need to discuss are these clocks. Now, given the rest of the bike looks so good and the effort they've put in for the retro side of the modern retro, it's a bit of a shame that the clocks that have been on the Hornet and the GT have followed suit on the F, but minor infringements so far. So we clocked up about 100 kilometres so far this morning, and I cannot tell you how different it feels to the Hornet. As I mentioned, the geometry is identical, and yet the bike feels like a completely different bike, and that's largely down to these big wide handlebars, which are very much higher, and the fact the seat, you're sat further back and you're sat much lower. Now the seat is 795 millimetres, which doesn't sound that low, but it is, and those with longer legs might struggle a bit because the seat is that low, and the pegs aren't that low, but because the seat is that low, you might struggle with a bit of cramp there. Ooh. But perhaps the most important thing is the sound of this thing. I mean, but there was kind of bold claims in the press briefing this morning, or last night, sorry, saying that this was probably the greatest sounding standard bike from a showroom ever. Now, I'm not going to go as far as that, but to keep in the modern retro theme, look, my microphone won't do it justice, but this sounds incredible. By the various methods they've gone to with changing the cam timing and inlet trumpets, there's a genuine sound, like an 80s, 90s sound. This bike sounds like a badly carburetted bike, but it runs smoothly. It's such a surreal experience. I don't think I can remember a manufacturer artificially inseminating a modern bike with retro sounds before. The work that's gone into this, it sounds like a 1980s/90s carved bike. You know, although the throttle feels nice and it feels well, it does often sound with that sort of pulsing sensation. It sounds like it's a sort of a, you know, running on 3, sometimes 4. And it definitely adds to the character of the bike. And I hate using the word character, but you know, with bikes like these, you can dress them up as much as you want. But anyone can make a modern retro. It's what you do with the rest of it, the ancillaries, the noise, and the character. There's Freddie Spencer. Of course, the person that essentially was responsible for the styling of this. It's a big old tank. It does feel girthy. I cannot get my head around just how different this feels to the Hornet. It's a whole new bike, or so it feels like anyway. All the power is at the bottom. There's a lovely spread of bottom end, and then it continues into the mid-range. Look, all the revs at the top just doesn't matter. It kind of dies off at 8 grand. And the rest of it is purely for kind of ear candy. And it really is ear candy, because I'll try and get it. So it's 6,000 RPM. It reminds me of an old rally car, like a Mark II Escort with big K&M filters on. I was kind of guilty pre-ride of, you know, looking at the stats and the geometry's the same. Apart from the subframe, the geometry in the frame is exactly the same. So I was kind of guilty pre-ride of thinking I knew what this bike would be like, but it couldn't be further from the truth. look, you've still got that innate flickability, and you know, it looks like a heavy bike. It's not. It's only 2 kilos heavier than the Hornet. But yeah, you've got that innate flickability and sharp handling, and a bike, really, when you look at it, you go, no, that's not going to do what this bike does. And it handles really well. Like I said, the weight distribution is totally different. These big wide bars put you further back, the seat's much lower. We haven't done too many miles in the saddle yet, but it's still comfy. And I tell you what, it's 40 degrees today, and I'm wearing Kevlar protected jeans, and it's not that hot, as in there's not that much heat emanating from the engine, so that's a good sign. You'll be fine in England, put it like that. Got to say, suspension, it's essentially the same shock and fork, but different spring rates, different linkage, and the ride is very plush. It kind of feels like the bike's sunk into the ground anyway, just with the riding position and the way the bike feels and is settled as standard, the kind of poise it has. But yeah, the stroke is beautifully controlled. Again, feels completely different to the Hornet. The fueling isn't bang on. The throttle response is great. Most of the time it feels great, but urban stuff, slower speed stuff, when you're not on and off the throttle, particularly when you go off the throttle, there's quite a lot of engine brake and there's a bit of jerkiness, but the rest of the time it feels very nice. Ciao. Ciao. Not too sure on the silver paint on the triple clamp. It kind of looks like a bit of a poorly executed sandblasting exercise. I mean, I get why they've done it for the silver to match the paint. I would have left them black personally. We haven't really had the chance to let the dog see the rabbit, really, in terms of cornering and anything else, but you can sense the bike's potential. As I said, it's got that innate Hornet flickability. Doesn't feel awkward on the side of the tyre, as you'd expect with the same geometry and same suspension, same frame, etc. Now, for the F, there has been some special gearbox inner workings. First and second shorter, third, fourth, fifth and sixth are longer. And I was expecting quite a gap between second and third, but actually it's kind of very, very minor. It just helps with a bit of oomph at the bottom with first and second, and then third, fourth, fifth and sixth, particularly fifth and sixth, help with cruising and undoubtedly keeping Honda's MPG figures happy. I'm sweating profusely here. Not that this bike is hard to ride, because it is. Oh, look, I don't want to use that kind of overused sentence, but it just feels like a Honda. It's a bike that you jump on as well straight away. It fills you full of confidence. No nasty surprises, no kind of weirdness. It feels comfortable, it feels natural, it feels intuitive, regardless of the speed you're riding it, which is probably a good and a bad thing. It kind of feels the same. And that is because of the bike it is. It's not trying to be a super naked. And Honda have done a decent enough job of making it feel so much different to a super naked, to a Hornet. So you're not having to ride around trying to thrash the nuts off it. It feels good in low RPMs. It feels good at, you know, legal speeds. It sounds good. Oh, boy, does it sound good. And they've even put two horns, the dual horn, to mimic the 70s, 80s, and the sound. It is proper. It's like a train horn.
Well, I hope you can hear me above these crickets. I can barely hear myself, so fingers crossed we've got technology on our side. Look, there's no point beating around the bush. Bikes like these, bikes like the CB1000F, are often sold on looks alone. But this bike backs it up on many fronts. You've got modern handling, which is great. It's not sacrificed in any way. As I said, you've got the looks, but you've got character. And I hate using the word character. We were told back in the day when I first started proper journalism that you shouldn't use character. We'll use persona or something like that. But it's got bags of it, and it's exciting. And this bike, I came in liking the looks of it, but the dynamics, and particularly the noise, deserve way more praise than I've heaped it on. I've been hyping this bike all day, and it's almost impossible to fault dynamically. But it's not squeaky clean. As I mentioned, the fueling, the snatchy throttle, closed to open, open to closed, yet another byproduct of Euro 5. And when we were riding down the motorway earlier, back to the hotel, it is quite exposed. You've got quite an open area here, and your legs are also exposed. So you get a bit of flappy leg syndrome. That's kind of, you know, cruising speed, should we say, 70 miles an hour plus. But as I said, I cannot heap enough praise on the noise and the feel of this engine and the attitude of the engine. Look, artificial induction noise is nothing new at all, but the levels that Honda have gone to with the engine itself, with the induction noise, with the pulsing in the engine, honestly, the camera doesn't do it justice. Only a test ride will unlock its true potential. And honestly, if you're in the market for a modern retro and you originally were thinking, look, this is a big bike. It looks quite big. It looks quite heavy. It's not at all. Jump on it, ride it. And anyone, I urge anyone to jump on it and give this noise a try, because it is very, very good. So back to those original questions. Why is it more expensive expensive than the Hornet? Well, there are a couple of reasons. Obviously, you've got the 6-axis IMU and you've got this engine work. Now, there aren't any Japanese engineers or kind of tech people to talk to, which is a bit of a shame because I really wanted to understand how they stumbled upon this engine configuration and why they did it and how long it took, etc. But of course, you've got that development in the engine and a 6-axis IMU, which is exactly why it's more expensive. And finally, is it as good as Kawasaki's award-winning Z900 RS? Look, it's going to be very close, and it's much closer than I imagined because this bike shocked me. The Z is arguably a bit sportier, but this is nearly a grand cheaper, and the head-to-head is going to be absolute banger. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. See you on the next one.